we're making a melt and pour soap, and we're starting off with some Stephensons clear no sweat melt and pour. It's very warm and very humid today. I've got 2 teaspoonfuls of titanium dioxide in here, and I'm just adding some warm water to that because we're going to add some titanium dioxide to the melted melt and pour, because the inners of I'm going to grate the melt and pour. Every now and again this lady Nandini, she always orders this soap. She absolutely loves it. It will be made in one of my regular loaf molds, but I'm just using this smaller one to make the white soap that I want to grate. So let's just chop up some melt and pour. My jugs are getting a bit decrepit already because I've been using them for making wax, and the colour seems to stick to the jug. You don't really need to chop your melt and pour up as small as I am here. I mean, you can throw in big chunks like this, but I know that people love to see soap get chopped up, so that's why I'm chopping it into small. So I want to make about 1 kilo of white soap, so I'm just going to fill this jug up with chunks and then hope that when it melts down we've got about 1 kilo. It's a long time since I've made melt and pour actually. Much prefer to make cold process, but melt and pour is a much cleaner process, and it's a great way to start. It's how to make it is very different to making cold process because it's already made. Of course, you buy it ready made. A lot of people think there's no lye in melt and pour because of a video on YouTube that's called No Lye Soap, but there's actually no such thing as no lye soap. You've got to have lye in it to make soap. So these Stewart jugs I'm using here, they're actually 2 litres. So as you can see, I've filled it right to the top, and we're going to pop it in the microwave. It'll take at least 8 minutes to melt all that I've got in here. So what I'll probably do is I'll put the microwave on for 5 minutes. Then I'll go back and check it, and then I'll try and work out, guess how many more minutes I need to melt it for. So when I find out exactly how many minutes I've taken, I'll let you know, and that'll be in the next couple of seconds. Okay, so we've had at least 5 minutes in the microwave, and we've just got a few lumps in the bottom. Now I'm used to using the Stephensons crystal soap base, not the no sweat, just the regular one. I think it was the first one they ever made. So I'm presuming that the no sweat actually melts faster, and we've only got 1 lump left in there now. In fact, I think it's dissolved already. There was quite a few lumps in there when I took it out. I am just going to put it in for one more minute because it does feel a little bit thick and I want it to be nice and fluid. So it's melted down to just over 1200, probably about 1300, 1.3 kilos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate some off because I want to make some embeds for the top of the soap. And because melt and pour is made with lye, but it was made ages ago, when you cut it and melt it and use it, it's totally safe. It's not like you don't have to wear gloves or anything for protection. All you have to be aware of is obviously you're heating something up, and all you have to be careful of is actually you're heating something up, so it's just the temperature. So we're adding all of that titanium dioxide into the soap because I want the shreds to be nice and opaque, really strong. If they're not very opaque, then they don't show up anywhere near as well in the clear melted soap. So I'm going to have like the opaque soap, I'm going to grate that, and then I'm going to melt clear. I won't be putting titanium dioxide in it, but I'll be putting colour in it, and then the contrast between the two will be really good. So we're just going to pour this straight into this small loaf mould, which takes 1.4 kilos. If you're watching the soap making from scratch series, a lot of you already have this mould. So this is the same mould that I'm using today. If you haven't seen the soap making from scratch series, we're on to episode 10, so I'll put a playlist in the description box below the video and an information card in the top right hand of the video now, so you can go and watch that if you want to, or wait until you've finished watching this one and then go and watch. One thing I would absolutely love you to do, and it will really help me, is by sharing the video, just trying to get more people to watch my videos. Okay, so I'm just going to separate that off into two containers because I want two different colours. We're going to have yellow and green. And I usually put flowers on the top of this soap, but the soap mould I use is, well, it's absolutely decrepit. So one of the soaps I'm going to pop yellow mica into. And then we're going to pop some green in as well into the other one. Just sprayed a little bit of rubbing alcohol in there. In different colours, so we'll have green apples, green bananas, green grapes, green pineapple, green strawberry. So you can see it's quite speckly. So we're just unmoulding this melt and pour now. Now this feels like melt and pour. So we're just going to chop it up into chunks that are just the right size for grating. And then we're going to grate enough to fill the loaf mould. If you want to know how big these are, I'll do it interior. The actual mould size is 43.3 by 9 by 8 centimeters deep, but with the liner, the internal measurement of the liner is 42.7 by 8.6 by 6.7. This liner is from Brambleberry. They still do these liners, but the silicon's a bit thicker. So you probably get a narrower bar of soap, which is actually a good thing. You know, I'd prefer it if my soap was like a centimetre narrower. But it isn't. This is the size mould we have to work with at the moment. Alright, so let's start grating up this soap, shall we? Sure the mould is nice and full, because when you pour the melted soap on, this will reduce down. I guess it's like snow until it compacts down after the snowfall. So you want it to be fairly loose so that all that melted soap can just wiggle its way through all of these grated pieces here. So we're starting the next lot now. So we're going to melt some more soap. We're going to add some green to it. And then we're going to add some Litsea Cubiba essential oil. So we've got a really nice strong lemony scent going on. So just another tip obviously is just to cut all of your melt and pour soap into smaller chunks, and they melt faster that way. They don't need to be too small though. These ones are probably 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. And then pop them in your heat safe jug, whether it be plastic or glass. I'm just going to fill this up because I'm pretty sure I need about 1.5 kilos of soap base to go into that mould there. Now when you're melting, because I'm actually melting quite a lot here, I'm going to do this on 1 minute increments in the microwave. But if you're doing less than 500 grams or a pound, shall we say, do it on 30-second increments, especially if you only want to melt like 200 grams or a couple of ounces or 4 ounces of soap. Do it on 30-second increments because you don't want to overheat the soap base, and I'll tell you what temperature the soap base is once it's melted. So this is going in the microwave now. Okay, so the soap's just come out of the microwave. We are at 76.4 degrees Celsius. So I'm just going to let that cool down for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add some colour and some fragrance. This time I'll be adding some water dispersible pigment, and it's going to be green. Okay, it's time to add a little bit of colour, and I really just want a tiny bit. I want this soap still to be translucent. I've actually added too much, but I haven't added too much, if you know what I mean. The good thing with pigment colours is they don't bleed, but you can use water-based liquid dyes. They do bleed. What that means is the colours will seep into each other. Say you're doing a layer of green and pink. The pink will seep into the green and the green will seep into the pink. Okay, so you need to check the usage levels for any fragrance or essential oil depending on which country you live in, because it's different all over the world. If you like lemon, you're going to love this. It's like a sweet sherbety lemon. It's really lovely. And it's, if you know anything about Lush, It's very, very similar to the other bath bomb fragrance. So I'm just feeling the sides again, but the soap is starting to get a bit of a skin on the top, and I don't want to let it get a skin, because then again it's going to be very difficult to pour it into all that grated soap. So I'm going to check the temperature. Just maybe going to let it sit for 1 minute, but we'll check the temperature now. We're at 67 degrees centigrade. It's very similar, the temperatures are very similar to actually the wax, making wax melts. Now if you let the soap cool down too much that you're going to pour on, it won't adhere, it won't stick to all the grated soap that's in the container. Yet at the same time, if you pour it on too hot, it's just going to melt all of the grated soap that's already in the container. So it's just finding a balance that's somewhere right in the middle, so that it's going to work exactly how you want it to. It probably will have some air pockets in there, but that's okay. It's no great big deal. You can't see them as much in the melt and pour soap like you do in cold process or hot process. So don't forget to stick around to the end of the video when I'm going to go through all of the tips and facts that you need to know if you want to make melt and pour soap. So I think I'm going to go for it. What I tend to find is, we're at 62 now, what I tend to find is when I can keep my hand on, and it is hot, but it's not unbearably hot. If it's unbearably hot, then I won't pour it, because I think it'll just melt all the grated soap that's in the container. So let's get this poured, shall we? And you want to pour all the way along and just keep going forward and back all the way. See how the grated soap is reducing in the mould now. Pouring it like this will make sure that you get now. It is quite hot, and I can see that some of the grated soap is actually melting. I just hope it doesn't melt all of it. So I'm guessing the temperature really needs to be more like 60. It could melt all that grated soap, this. So let's cross our fingers that it doesn't. I'm just spraying the top with rubbing alcohol. So you can see what I've done here is I've just added another 4 pieces of melt and pour soap into this container, because we've got a little bit of a lip going on here where the silicone liner is, and I need to put these on to the soap. Now if I put them straight on, they're probably just going to fall in. And we don't want that. We want them to sit on the top, so of course everyone can see them. So once this is kind of set here, then we'll pour this melted on the top, and then we'll be able to, these will just sit on the top, but they'll be sunken in to that layer of melted soap that's in this container. That'll get poured on, then we'll just pop those in, and then that will hold the embeds in place. You need to make sure the embeds are held in place so that a child can't pick them off and put them into the mouth and become a choking hazard. So it's really important that this is all stuck together very, very well. So when you're going to pour this melted soap on, you need a bit of a skin, and I'd say it's really difficult to show you how thick this is in a video, but I would say it's about 1 millimeter thick. Obviously I can't tell for sure how thick it is, but if it's too thin, when you pour the soap on, it's just going to melt through the skin, and if the skin's too thick, the top part isn't going to stick. So we're going to give her just a very fine spray of rubbing alcohol, and I'll show you how hot this soap is. It should be pretty hot. It's 93. The reason I've got it at 93 is because I want it to stick to this, and I also want the embeds to stick. So I'm just going to pour this very thin layer on there like so. You don't want to put too much on because you don't want it to overflow the silicone liner when you put the embeds on. Seems like it has already melted through there. Let's try this end and see what we've got here. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the side. Luckily we do still have some grated soap in there. I was panicking for a second, thinking I was going to have to remake this soap, but luckily I'm not going to have to do that. So the fruits look really, really cute on the top, and they're really stuck firm in there. They're not going anywhere. And now we're going to slice it up. Okay, so now time for some pro tips and facts for making the perfect melt and pour. So contrary to popular opinion, melt and pour soap is soap making. I look at it this way. Think of a designer who takes a piece of fabric and create something spectacular from that piece of fabric. They're still artists, they're still designers. Just because the melt and pour soap is pre-made base doesn't mean you can't be artistic with it. Smells absolutely incredible. So number 2, you can buy tons of different varieties of melt and pour soap. You can buy African black, aloe vera, argan oil, carrot, donkey milk, all the different milks available. Goat's milk, vanilla stable, transparent, honey, no sweat, which is what I'm using today, suspension base, SLS free, triple butter. You can even buy jelly soap and foaming bath butter. And this brand that I'm using is Stephensons, and they do many different, more than what I'm even talking about here. Number 3, melt and pour soap does actually contain lye. I'm going to say there's no such thing as lye free soap, but you can actually make soap with citric acid. Now, I haven't ever tried this, I've never seen it, I've just read it online, so I don't know for definite if that's possible and how it works, but Number 4, you can create many different designs with melt and pour soap. You can still be very, very creative. You can do swirls, grates, embeds, all kinds of things. One thing about melt and pour, it has a very high glycerin content, and that attracts moisture, so it's really good for locking moisture into the skin. But the con to that is that the soap itself attracts moisture, so as soon as you've cut it into your bars, you want to wrap it, and that'll stop any moisture getting in and sticking on the outside of the bars. Now if that does happen, you can actually just scrape it off with a knife and then wrap it, or put it somewhere warm where the central heating's on. And if you've only got a little bit of it on there, but it's not ideal for if you're selling soap outside and you want to leave your bars unwrapped, because any moisture or humidity in the air, it will attract to the bar. So if you're selling outside, I would suggest that you wrap your soap. It's different to cold process, shall we say. Now, melt and pour soap sets really fast. Depending on how much you're making, it can set in minutes or hours. So before you start, make sure you've got all of your equipment ready to go. Melt and pour soap can be remelted, but obviously if I was to remelt this, all the white and the green and the colours on the top, they're all just going to mix in together. But if when you melted your soap before you make your soap, and it starts to set up, you can just pop it back in the microwave on 30-second increments. But don't, the more you melt it, the less stable the soap becomes, and it can actually burn and get like a stinky smell. You can always add extra ingredients to melt and pour. Now I suggest a teaspoon per kilo if you're going to add butters or oils or clays or anything like that. So that's like 1 teaspoon per kilo or half a teaspoon per pound. One of the best pros to melt and pour soap is it can hold a heck of a lot of fragrance. So, but what you need to do is, depending on which country you're in, check what the usage levels are of fragrance, because you can only put in what you're actually allowed to put in for safety reasons. But if you're just making melt and pour for use at home and you want to put more fragrance in, your skin's okay with that, I don't see why you can't put more in, because you can melt and pour soap will actually take easily like either 1.5 ounces per pound or 80 grams per kilo. You can probably even get more than that in, and it still will set up. Or just incidentally, if you're putting honey into melt and pour, that really does play with the soap being able to set. So again, that would be 1 teaspoonful per kilo or half a teaspoonful per pound. Melt and pour, contrary to popular belief, does actually produce a really good lather and is very smooth on the skin. Number 11, you can use and sell melt and pour as soon as it's unmolded and cut. So this soap here is safe to use instantly, and that is another pro to melt and pour. If you want quick embeds when you're making soap, use melt and pour, because they'll be set up in half an hour. Doesn't take very long for them to set. Number 13, melt and pour loves rubbing alcohol for dissolving bubbles and helping adhere layers together. I always use the 99%. I think it works better than the 70%. Number 14. You can colour melt and pour with many different colours, such as water-based dyes, although these do bleed. So as I mentioned before, bleeding means that the different colours will, for instance, say this was a bleeding water-based liquid dye, which it isn't, it's mica. The yellow could bleed into the green, and the green could bleed into the yellow, or the green could bleed into the white, but that's not going to happen with this soap. Favourite moulds for using with melt and pour is always silicone, but you can actually use wood as long as you line it with freezer paper or a silicone liner, of course. And plastic moulds work really, really well with melt and pour soap. Number 16. Microwave melt and pour on 30-second increments if you're only melting a small amount. So say under 500 grams, which is round about a pound, do it on 30-second increments. If you're melting more than 500, you can probably melt the soap on 1 minute intervals, because obviously there's a lot more soap in your jug, and you're not going to burn it. Over melting melt and pour soap, it will get stinky and burnt. You'll smell that stinky burnt smell, which isn't very pleasant. So temperature wise, when melt and pour's fully melted, you're looking at around probably about 78 degrees centigrade, which is 172 Fahrenheit. So number 17, always allow your melted soap to cool for a little bit, just a couple of minutes, before you add your colours or essential oils or your fragrance, to around about 70 degrees centigrade, 158 Fahrenheit. But what you will need to do is you need to check the flash point on each fragrance. Now your fragrance or supplier will they will supply this. Sometimes it's written on the bottles, but if it's not written on the bottles, you can find that out from the company that you bought the fragrance oil from, because every single fragrance has a different flash point. And you'll know if something's flashing, if you know if a fragrance is flashing, when you put it in your product that's too hot, you'll see a vapour coming off there. Melt and pour is the best type of soap if you want to teach your kids how to make soap. But you will need to supervise them and allow the soap to cool to around 65 to 70 degrees. Obviously, the only issue with melt and pour is that the liquid soap could be a bit hot, so you just make sure, just like you check your bath when you run your bath for your kids, check that the temperature's not too high. Number 19, if you're selling any soap, as we mentioned before, with embeds in, you must make sure that all of those embeds are thoroughly fixed into the soap, just in case any under 3-year-olds get hold of it. I mean, any decent parent is going to make sure everything is out of reach of children. So that's a great thing to always remind everyone, is keep well out of the reach of young children. The reason all of the embeds need to be well fixed in is that they could become a choking hazard. Now you'll be able to get a choke windpipe tube. It's about that big, probably not an inch in diameter, and see if the embed or anything will actually fit into that tube. And if it doesn't, it won't be a choking hazard, but if it can fit in there, even if it's tiny, then it could become a choking issue. So you're always trying to avoid. That's the most important thing. And number 20, the 3 most important things that you need to make great soap or great products of any kind, which is what I always say, are patience, practice and passion. Patience, practice and passion will enable you to be hungry enough and care enough to make the very best products that you can. But most of all, you want to have great fun doing this. It shouldn't be a chore and it shouldn't be unenjoyable. Yeah, you're going to come across issues that are difficult to overcome, but overcoming them is very rewarding. And you can actually make extra income by making products from home. You're not going to become rich. We are selling bars of soap. We're not selling Rolls Royces or Porsches or Lamborghinis or Bentleys. But it will create a small extra income if you can't get out to work and your husband works and you're at home doing whatever you're doing. Of course, you can become rich if you want to grow your business and employ people and have a great big unit to make products in. If people like your products enough, that's all down to you and what you want to do with your life. But the best part of this is it's fun. This was 20 pro tips and facts for perfect melt and pour soap making. Ready-made soap that you can melt, then pour, and be really, really creative with. If you want to help my channel grow, all you need to do is click share, which is underneath the video, and then hopefully more people will get to see my videos. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. I'm really grateful. Don't forget to pop your comments down below, and any information that you need is in the description box below the video. I'll see you very soon for another video from Eden's Secret. Thanks for watching. Bye bye for now.